everyone, this is Lori from My File Addiction. In this video, we're going to talk about the different rhinestone fill options that the Silhouette program has. I'm running the business edition, so in order to have the rhinestone feature, you have to have at least the Designer Plus, or the best version is Business Edition, okay? So your basic version, which is a free version, does not come with the rhinestone panel. Okay, so like I said, we're going to talk about different fill options and when you should and should not use the different styles that the Silhouette program offers. And it's not only the Silhouette program, most of these are standard in most other rhinestone programs. So this could be applied to any of those too, if you happen to have another rhinestone program. Let's see, I'm going to take and just fill in a couple basic shapes here. So I'm not going to get really in depth into creating a certain design of any sort today, but I just want to kind of show you some different fill options. So we're going to do a star here. Now this particular star has a little handle here so you can change the pitch of those points. You can also add points too, which is kind of cool. But I'm going to just make this a regular star. Oops. And I'm going to try to rotate it a little bit here to kind of keep it straight. Okay. So each of these items are a decent size. This one is about 7 1/4 inches wide by 7 inches tall, and the heart is about 6 1/4 inches wide by 5 3/4 inches tall. Okay. Okay. So we're going to start with, I think we're going to start with the heart first. Okay, so this is our rhinestone panel off to the right here. So we're going to open that up. I'm going to use different rhinestone, I'm going to make examples of the different fills. So I am going to duplicate my heart a few times just so I have a few to show you. Okay, because once you use the rhinestone fill, the original object that you're filling goes away. Also, when I do use, when you do fill an object, it is good to keep a copy of the original design that you filled so that you can place it behind your circles and use it as a guide sometimes to help you clean up your designs. So always copy, keep it off to the side, and work with a copy of that original design. Okay. Okay, so the first, we're going to stick with your first thing you're going to select is, what stone size you want to use. And your basic stone size that everybody likes to use is basically an SS10 stone. The bigger the stone, it makes it kind of harder to fill sometimes areas because you can't fit as many objects into that area unless it's really huge. Okay. And then if you go real small like an SS6, sometimes you get a lot better results because you can put a whole lot of stones in there. But I usually use the SS6 size for smaller details, or if I absolutely want to fill in gaps. I am a person that doesn't like to see gaps, but when I create files for my customers, to sell on my website. Everybody likes an SS10, so I try to do that, and I try to hide the gaps as much as possible. If I do custom designs, or I do something custom and it's just for one person, I will ask them which way they prefer, and you know, and kind of go from there. But when you are filling a design, you can only select one size. So we are going to select the SS10. So we're going to make sure that's selected. The next thing is the spacing. So I already had this program up. So when you open up your Silhouette program, the spacing is going to default to 0.039. To me, and I've talked about this in some of my other videos, this is my third in the series of my tip videos. So I'm sure in the first tip video and the second tip video, I probably touched base on spacing a little bit, but 0.039 to me is too much space between your stones. I realize the template material is thin and it can tear, but I think Silhouette kind of overcompensated when they defaulted to this size. I wish that they allowed you to change the spacing and make it permanent, but unfortunately, if you close down the program and reopen it, it's always going to default to 0.039. Now, if you have it open and you kind of just jump from tab to tab, and even if you close this out, it stays at the size that you change it to, okay? So you don't so much have to kind of worry about it once you've changed it and you want to keep the program open. It should stay that way, but you know, once you close it down and reopen it back up again, it's all over again. You have to remember to change it. The spacing that I suggest that you use is 0.025. Okay, I had mentioned in my tip number 1 video that I'm going to do a video that kind of will show you how to do some test cuts. So I still do plan on doing that, but I thought about doing this video first, so I haven't gotten to it. But if you find that 0.025 is, if the stones are too close, then, you know, watch for my video that will show you kind of how to do some test cuts, and you can see where your spot is that will allow you to cut the circles closer together, but to avoid your template material tearing. But right now, I've been selling files for a very, very long time, and this is the setting that and the spacing that I use, and I do not have any problems. Now, some of my older files, my spacing was a lot closer, because back in the day when I used to make transfers and I bought template material, it was a lot thicker, so you could get your circles closer together. So some of my older files still exist. They have the old spacing, a little bit tighter. All I do is when somebody tells me they got a problem with it, I readjust it, add a little bit more spacing, and everything works out just fine. So, okay, so back to this. So after you select your stone size, you're going to change your spacing, okay? So the next thing up here is your options for filling this design with rhinestones. The first one is none. It's kind of like a way to kind of clear your palette and go back to, you know, it not being stoned or anything like that. So the first one is just an edge fill, okay? So that one basically will just outline your vector object. Again, when I talk about a vector object, it's one that can actually be cut. So if you were to send this heart to a cutter and use it to cut any type of vinyl, it would cut the heart, okay? If this was a JPEG, you could not stone it or you could not cut it because it is not a vector object. A vector object actually has a line that defines the shape of the object, and those stones recognize that line, and it recognizes the area inside that line. Okay, so that's how it the program recognizes that, and it knows how to fill it and where to fill it. But a JPEG, it does not. Okay, so, or a PNG file does not. So you can only use a vector object. Okay, so most would say, wow, okay, this is a good looking design, near perfect, this is going to be cool, I'm just going to use this. I have been doing this, I've been designing for over 15 years now, and I've learned to spot a lot of imperfections, and it's kind of my thing. I am kind of a stickler for detail. I want to present the best possible design to my customers, and I'm assuming that anybody that wants to be in this industry, they want to do the same thing. Okay, we don't always have to take what the program gives us and say, okay, that's as best as it's going to be. Okay, the program can't visually see what we see. All it did was lay these circles on this vector line around here. Okay, so given the dimensions, it's going to try to stay within our spacing that we assigned and the circle size that was assigned. So it's going to try to fit as many of those objects in there, getting as close to your spacing and your circle size that you give it. And it tries to avoid collisions. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily want to overlap. Sometimes you will see areas where the stones are close together. But so then now, as the designer, we need to say, okay, we need to take it to that next level. This is not what I would consider a perfect heart. Okay, so yes, when you're I'm going to make a copy of this. So I'm going to do Control D, which duplicates it. As long as you are still within the rhinestone function, that means you have not released the rhinestones, you can make adjustments to this. So you could make it tighter, bigger, smaller, try to get, that perfect heart, okay? And you might get it maybe at this level, but you're like, well, I really needed it to be this size. So sometimes adjusting the size is not always an option, and it's not always going to correct your problem either, okay? So you can try that first if that's what you want to do. See if you can get better details. You could also try to adjust your spacing. So you could say, instead of 0.025, maybe we'll go to 0.026. And we'll see if that makes a difference. Let's see if that changed it. So there's 111 stones here. So if I put that back to 0.025, let me see if that stone count changes. 113, okay? So just by changing that last number, it was able to fit 2 more stones somewhere along the line of the heart, okay? So sometimes you can do that. You can just, that second digit, or I should say that third digit, change that, 0.027. See if that makes a difference. See, going up from 0.026 to 27, it wasn't able to fit any more stones in there, so it probably didn't even really change it, okay? But little increments like that might make a difference. Okay. Um, what I prefer to do, and I know many might, be discouraged to do this. Actually, I'm going to do a copy of this so we can keep and we can compare after we're done. But I put in the extra time to fix all of these issues. Okay, you got to realize that once this heart's done, it's done. Okay, yes, it may take you 5-10 minutes to do any changes to it, but then you've got a heart that you probably could reuse at some other point. Okay, it will save you time from having to do it again and fixing it again. So when you're done with this heart, what I like to do is, even if you use this design with something, you put this heart with something else, make a copy of the heart, put it into a new tab, create a file that says hearts, and every time you make a heart a new size, or you're looking for a heart, go to that file, and I've got 12 different size hearts. Some are outlined, some are filled, some are one color, some are two color. Chances are I've got a heart close to what I need, so I can go to that file, pick that heart, and copy, paste it, put it into another design, and I'm done. Okay, so spending the time pays off in the end, because you have this. Okay, you can reuse it again. It's not a one and done kind of thing. Okay, so when I look at this heart, I see this side and this side match exactly. Okay, so if you cut this heart right down the center, basically you can take one side and paste it over to the other side. Okay, you don't have to correct both sides. So we just have to decide which one we're going to use. Okay, so I look at this and I'm like, okay, here's my center point for the bottom, and here's my center point for the top, where the two curves come together. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I made a copy of my original, so in case I have to go back to it, I have it here just in case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. Zooming in and visually seeing your object closer gives you more room to see things and estimate your spacing and that kind of stuff. Being zoomed way out, everything looks like it's so close together. Okay, but when you start zooming in, you can see that there is a sufficient amount of spacing between here. Okay, and all I'm doing to kind of zoom is I'm holding my Alt key down and I'm using the wheel on my mouse to kind of zoom in and out. There could be an easier way, but this is what I find that works best for me. So what I'm going to do is I am going to release the rhinestones. So once I release the rhinestones, I cannot change the size of this design anymore. If I do, it's going to change the size of the circles. And when you change the size of the circles, it's no longer going to cut an SS10 stone. So you have to make sure the sizing is the size that you want the design before you release those stones, because you can't resize it after that. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to keep the right side of the heart. So I am going to take, and I'm going to select the circles on the left, and I am going to delete all those. Okay, now I'm going to select this. I am going to open up I think it's my replique panel right here. And I am going to mirror this, and I want to mirror it to the left. Okay, so now this is what I have. what we want to do is, I mean, obviously we want the points to, you want this part to come to a point and you want this to come to a point. So if you were flexible on the, the width, one option could be to move this over a little bit. You could take one of these circles and I can hold down I'm going to select the circle, hold down my Alt key, and then I left click on my mouse, hold that down, and then just drag it. So that duplicates, okay? I can go to here and I can do the same thing, and you're just kind of eyeballing your spacing. So now if I looked at this design, and this to me is not really centered over, so I'm going to center that a little bit more. So now if I look at these two designs, side by side, now you can kind of really spot the imperfection, the parts that I fixed. Okay, you can kind of see that this one, the point came down, and this particular circle here intersected or kind of blended with this stone instead of this stone. And yeah, so you got issues here, okay? So say we didn't really want it to come down. To me, this kind of looks a little bit weird to have it, I don't know, it comes down maybe a little bit too far for my liking. So another thing we could do is, I'm going to keep this copy just as another one. I'm going to make another copy of this one. This is the original. I'm going to release my stones. I'm going to still work with the right side. I think I'm going to delete this stone here. Did it delete? Let me see here. Okay, it deleted it. Okay, I didn't think it deleted it. Okay, so now I want this stone and this stone to be lined up because these are my two center points. So to me, I think to make everything look centered, that those two stones should line up. So I'm going to make sure that that happens. So I'm going to select the top stone and the bottom stone. And I'm going to go to my transform panel, bring that up, and I am going to align those. So I think by looking at these two circles, I am going to try to align them to the left. I'm thinking visually this bottom circle looks like it's shifted over to the left more so than this one. So I want to bring this top stone over to the same side as the bottom stone. So I'm going to see if that works. Okay. So it moved it a little bit. So they were pretty close to being lined up. Okay. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this and I'm going to just shift that over a little bit. And the reason I'm doing this on this particular, without it being together, is any slight little adjustments sometimes will prevent you from having to do adjustments on both sides, especially when you're going to mirror that piece. It doesn't always work out that way, but sometimes I like to try to make any adjustments to the first piece that I'm going to mirror. That way it hopefully will save me from, having to do that after I put the two pieces together. So I'm going to select this one, and now I'm going to replicate it and mirror it to the left again. Okay, so instead, now I'm going to group this piece. So I'm going to do the shortcut key, which is Control G. You can also find the grouping under the object panel, or you can right click on it and there's a group. But I like to try to learn the shortcuts. And if you look at my very first tip number 1 video, I show you where you can find a shortcut sheet that Silhouette has in their user manual that you can print out. So make sure you watch that video and you can get that sheet, and then you can learn all your shortcuts. Okay, and I also talk about how I like to make things colorful. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my color panel, and I am going to change that side to another color. And I'm going to show you that only because what I plan on doing is I'm going to select this side and I'm going to start nudging it over. And what I want to do is I want to take these 2 circles and I want to line them exactly on top of the 2 blue circles that are right next to it. Let's see. Somehow. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so if you zoom in real quick here, real close. And what I try to do, it seems like when you do another function, it takes it out of where you can arrow over. Okay, so basically that is lined exactly on top of that one. And since we centered both of those, the one on top should be exactly over the top of the other circle. And it is. Okay. So the reason I grouped this side and I left this side ungrouped, because now this allows me, now basically I have 2 circles here. I want to delete one of those circles. If not, you'll have a duplicate circle. It's not a big deal. Your cutter will cut 2 circles instead of 1, but it will also add to your stone count. So sometimes if you've purchased a design from me and there is a duplicate circle in there somehow, somewhere, it's because I've forgotten to delete it. It's because I'm doing something like this. Okay, so what you can do is you can just drag it over that. It's selected the bottom circle because that was the part of the heart on the right that's ungrouped, and just I hit delete. Okay, so if I go down to the bottom and I do the same thing, and I'm going to hit delete. Okay, so now what we have here is we got a little bit of an overlap here. Okay, so I can tell you right now, just because I have designed for so long and I have made transfers. Before I started designing full-time, I had a rhinestone transfer business. So I have my fair share of templates that I cut, okay? And I can tell you right now, if you have a slight overlap like this, it's not going to make a hill of beans. It's not going to, you're going to have 2 circles that are cut together, but because we cut, our circles are larger than our actual rhinestone sizes, okay? So for the rhinestones to fall into the holes, we have to cut the holes larger than the actual rhinestone. Okay, so an actual rhinestone is, I'm going to simulate one here. I take this and I change it to, good question. I only know how to do it in millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to my preference panel, which is this little gear here. I'm going to temporarily Change this to millimeters. Select OK. Now I can see what this size is, millimeters. Okay, so roughly a SS10 stone is 3 millimeters. When we cut the hole, if we were to compare apples to apples in millimeters, this circle is 3.3 millimeters. Okay, so see when I click on that, it's 3.3 millimeters. So basically, this is the stone that's going to fall into that hole. So there's going to be that much room around the circle that's cut for that stone to fall into there. Okay, so if we take, and I'm going to change these to green, we take this circle and say that stone falls into that hole, and I'm going to duplicate this circle, and this circle falls into this hole. See, there's enough room, even though those two circles overlapped, there is enough room for those two stones to still fall individually into those two holes. So that's why it's okay for that to happen. Now, you don't want your whole template to be like that, but it's okay to have things here and there overlap like that. Actually, it's kind of better to have them overlap than to have, okay, I'm going to ungroup this right now. So my shortcut for ungrouping is Control-Shift-G. And now these are ungrouped again because they have the individual boxes around them. But sometimes if you have too little spacing like this, your template material is going to tear anyways. Okay? Having it cut like this is going to give you a controlled, what do I want to say? Having two circles together, and your template won't tear because it's actually two joined circles. Okay, there won't be this cut here. This will be all just open in between these two circles here. Okay, so like I said, it's okay to do this every once in a while. But if you totally didn't want to do that, you could take these two circles and just kind of bump these out a little bit. Create your spacing and do something like that. And now, if you look at your circle here, I'm going to delete these because I don't want to accidentally use those. Those are smaller than they should be. I'm going to go back to preferences and I'm going to select inches. Now, when I design in my program that I normally use, which is called SignLab 10, I design in millimeters. That's with the way originally when these programs first started coming out, everything was done in millimeters because the stone sizes were in millimeters. So sometimes I have to stop and think because I do not. The only time I look at anything as in inches is I see what the size of the design is and size it. Other than that, when I design everything in the millimeter function. So this is kind of new to me, but I know people are do the opposite, so I'm trying to do how you guys do it. Okay, so I am going to take this and then I'm going to change it all to that. And as you can see, I'm going to group this, Control G. And I like to group because it's easier to move the designs around when it's one piece versus when there are sometimes dragging all those individual circles around. So the bigger the design, the more it fills, the more it's going to lag. So again, these are our 3 hearts. This one is the one that the Silhouette program did for us, and some people might say, oh, that's perfect to me. But then when you compare it to cleaning it up a couple different ways, you can see the transformation. And if you set all of these side by side and you told your customer to pick which one they liked, I can guarantee this would be their last choice. So they would probably pick one of these two, only because you've taken the time to clean it up. You've made your lines even, you've made the pitch of the heart even, and you've gone that extra step, okay? So you don't know how things look until you move them side by side. And that's kind of why I wanted to, show you how these are, and how you can get different looks. And you don't have to necessarily take what the Silhouette program gives you, okay? Okay, so the next fill is picking between these two. And I can tell you, probably most new users, and maybe some people that have been using this program for a while, their number one fill option that they're going to choose is going to be this particular fill here, the linear fill. I can tell you right now, it's a fill that I rarely use myself. And I will explain why. I'm not here to bash how anybody designs. I'm giving you perspective from the way I design, okay? So, I'm going to let you guys decide for yourself, what options you want, but I just kind of want to show you again, by spending a little time and cleaning things up, how you can make your designs look so much nicer, okay? And I never go into creating a design and saying, I want to try to do that in under a minute, okay? Realistically, I know that's not possible. I like to find shortcuts, like I did with the heart, cutting it in half, flipping it over. To me, that's a shortcut. I have saved time by doing something like that. So I don't mind taking no shortcuts, but I don't like to take shortcuts and just say, this is the way it is. I'm not going to spend that extra time cleaning it up, and this is how I'm going to present the design to the customer, okay? I don't look at my designing that way. But like I said, I understand time is money, and some people may not want to spend the extra time on the designing process, so they do what they have to do, okay? So anyways, so the first option is a linear fill, okay? And a linear fill does have its pluses. I do think that when it fills the inside of an object, you get a more consistent looking fill, and it does sometimes tend to look very nice from the inside, but not so much on the outside, the outline of the design, okay? So I'm like this design, when we did the outline fill, it followed the natural curve of the heart, okay? So then it's got curved lines, it's got a few straight areas, goes down to a point. So that outline was able to follow that natural look of the heart. A linear fill is not going to do that. A linear fill is going to do rows of horizontal stones. and it's just going to do rows and rows and rows and rows and rows, and it's going to cut off and stop at the ends, at the sides of the object that you're filling, okay? The drawback to doing that is when you have a curved line at the top, it turns that now into a flat line. So when I see flat lined objects that are supposed to have a natural curve to them, it's personally not the look that I'm going for. I want to present my customers with a design that looks as close to the natural look of the object that is started with, okay? And using this linear fill is not, you're going to see, it's not going to maintain that natural look. So if I select this, we have our SS10. I'm going to change my spacing back to 0.025, and then I'm going to select this. So a lot of people would look at this and say, wow, you know, did a great fill. And if you look at it from this area and here, and you're like, yep, you know, it's pretty clean. Not, you know, the spacing is pretty consistent when you come here. But as I start, my eyes start drifting to the outside line of the object. That's where I start seeing all the imperfections of the linear fill. You have a flat heart, okay? I consider this flat, even though it put a few up here to try to mimic that arch. It still doesn't look as nice as this. When it comes down to the point, when it comes down to, see, now the spacing here is pretty consistent. As it starts coming down to these, now these outside circles get farther and farther apart, okay? It's because it can't, it's trying to, it stops, when it places that rhinestone, it stops right at that line, okay? So it's not going to try to fill in and create this kind of a flow. You know, here's a space here. So here it didn't even put a point. It just basically did two stones side by side. So the point didn't even start until basically about here. So again, I'm not here to you know, pick apart the way people design, but I see all too often that people choose this particular fill for a lot of their designs because they think it's as close to being as perfect as they can get it. But that's not the case, okay? You can, if you put in a little bit of time and a little bit of hard work, you can get it to look a lot nicer, okay? But you're not going to start out with a perfect design either. So I'm going to take this one and I'm just going to leave this here, okay? So now these basically are the two designs. I'm going to turn this one, group it here, group. I'm going to turn this one into, I'm going to just make this one red. Okay, so these are the two designs that I did by doing a little editing. Okay. So anytime you have an object that you have to fill that has any kind of curve to it, which is basically almost all of our objects. So that's why I don't use my linear fill that often. And quite frankly, even if I was filling in a box that was square, I still probably would not use my linear fill. I would actually build that box by duplicating rhinestones, kind of like I did in my tip number 1 video. Okay, so I would manually build my box or my straight line. I just don't like the inconsistencies that I can get by using a linear fill. Okay, So the next fill is called a radial fill. And basically what that does is that will start with the outside edge of your object. It will lay the stones on that. And then basically what it almost does is, if you were to take this heart and you were to do, where's my offset? Okay, I think this is my offset panel. I did a internal offset for this heart, and we're going to kind of compare. So if I did an internal offset, my distance is 0.155, which is the size of my circle, which is 0.13, plus my spacing, 0.025, I get 0.155. Okay? I take this and I do an internal offset, which it did. Okay, so it only, it doesn't allow me to pick. But if I keep hitting, I must have to keep hitting this one. So basically, what a radial fill does is it's basically filling in the internal side following a series of imaginary lines based on the size of the stone you told it to use and the spacing. Okay, so it would be pretty close to what, if I were to fill in this object, I bet you that the internal, the linear fill would, these probably would almost kind of yield the same results, but let's give it a try. Okay, so basically I'm going to take this, and this is my outcome. Okay, so people normally look at this and they're like, this is the part I don't like. It doesn't look good. I agree. I don't think that that part looks good. So anytime your eyes are drawn to a certain area, that means you need to go in and you need to fix it. Okay? Just because the stones were laid this way doesn't mean they have to stay this way. Now, as a designer, you have to go in and you have to clean that up. And cleaning it up means moving circles around, adding, deleting, making changes, okay? Making this all look like it should be just one object, okay? I'm going to, just for giggles here, I am going to see if I were to have selected this, and I'm just going to try and fill this in and see what happens. Okay, so this one I basically just did outline fill, only because each one, it recognized each one of those lines as just a, like it would be an outline, the outline line. And this is the results it gave me for when I put my own internal offset fills in there. So you can try that too, because it's almost going to be the same exact thing. You can see which one is going to give you the best results. So if I change this all to one color, you can kind of see this one, you know, obviously filled in this area a little bit better. But to me, this one over here might have had a maybe a tad bit better fill. Okay, I'm going to look at the bottom lines. Those are pretty consistent. Okay, and same thing here. Okay, so now what we need to do is, I am just going to delete this one because I don't think I'm going to use this one. I think I'm going to use the one that it gave me. So again, you can try to see if adjusting the spacing, if that changes anything. So if we change this to 0.026, the stone count right now is 997. So if I change that, it changed it to 987. So it actually took away 10 stones. So if you like that look better, and starting with that, let's try, go back to 7. That changes it to 962. See, to me, by making those little bit of spacing changes, now this gives us maybe something a little bit, with something with a little less cleanup. So I'm going to take this particular one and, let's see, okay. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take this one and I'm going to make a copy of it because I want to keep my original. So I'm going to select Alt and I'm just going to bring this over here. And I'm going to maybe turn this into, I'm going to change this to brown. And I am going to release my rhinestones on this one. And you got to be patient again. So when you see all individual little boxes around the circles, that means it's released. The more objects you have, the more time sometimes it'll take. Now we have a lot going on in this particular design space, so sometimes that can slow things down too. So if I wanted to, what I might do is I take this, I'm going to edit, I'm going to go to copy, and I think I'm going to open up a new design space, and I'm going to edit, and I'm going to do paste. And now I have it just kind of by itself now. Okay. So I am going to delete this one. I don't think I need my offset anymore. So right now I'm going to do that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my cleanup process here a little bit. Okay, so with two things we can do. We can try to clean up and look at this heart as a whole, or we can do it like we did with the one, the way it was when it was just an outline design. I can cut this heart in half and I can clean up half of it. I can paste my two halves together and then maybe only have to do a little bit of a tweaking in the center where the two are pasted together. So because these are not perfectly lined up, and we had that same issue when we had just the outline where the circles did not come to a complete point, I think I'm going to go the route of cutting this heart in half because I want both of my sides to be equal. So in order to do that, we have to basically copy and mirror our one side to make it look exactly like the other side. So I am going to take, and I'm going to take this left side of the heart, and I am going to, let's see, see where my split is. Okay, so that's about where my split is going to be. So now I can take, if I would have left that selected, but if not, I can bring up my select by color panel here. Don't freak out when your colors don't show up right away. Sometimes it takes a bit for that new color to come into that panel. See how there was a bit of a delay? So the brown had been there for a bit, but since I just turned this piece to orange, it doesn't immediately show up in here. So kind of give it some time, okay? So now I'm going to select the orange piece, and I think I am just going to delete that. Okay, so now, I think I'll just move that over there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to clean up part of this heart here. And again, I'm doing it because what I'm hoping to do is to not have to clean up both sides of the heart, because I'm going to mirror it over. If I clean up one side, especially just in this particular area, I know it's going to be cleaned up when I mirror it. So then I might only have to concentrate on the area where the two hearts come together. So, sorry, everything's kind of hidden here because I have all these panels up. But maybe I'll just throw these over here for right now. Okay, so what I may do here is I'm going to put this one here. The spacing looks tight, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my, let's see, okay, oh, it's going to be my I'm going to need this panel right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a row of stones. And I like to go kind of as far out as possible, okay? Because the more stones that you select, the more evenly spaced out they will respace. If I just selected these 3, they still would be very tight. Even if I selected these 4, they would still be very tight. But when it's redistributing the spacing between, all of these stones, you're going to see it's not going to make a huge difference. So see, it moved everything over a little bit, but now everything kind of looks like it's still not too tight of a space between them. But you can only do that when your circles are kind of in a horizontal line. See, I stopped at this one. I didn't go to here and here because now these are starting to go down. So these were going up a little bit, but I didn't want to go in another direction because sometimes that will throw them off and throw them out of alignment. So, if you were going to respace vertically, you could probably respace this, all the way to about here. But if you start adding these in, then it would throw them off a little bit. So you can only do a vertical and horizontal line, and only with just a tiny bit of a shift. Okay, so I'm going to put this one up here. I'm going to select my Alt key, and this is how I'm going to duplicate any stones that I might have to insert. You hold down your Alt key, and then you click on it, hold the left click down on your mouse, and you just drag it, and then you let it go and drop it. Let's see. Sorry, I'm not used to the zoom feature in this particular program. My program just allows me to use my mouse and my wheel, and I seldom ever have to use my sliding bars, so I feel like I fumble a lot in this program, but I don't know what else to kind of do. Okay, so now we have we have to determine a little bit of spacing issues here. And what I may just kind of do, now this is when things going to start coming together, but I might just kind of shift these around a little bit. When I look at rows of stones, I will go off into different directions and kind of look at the spacing, of the stones going this way. So when I look at this stone, I will look at stones going this way. I will look at it going this way. So I kind of, you look at it in just kind of different directions. So I know there's going to be a space here. So what I may just end up doing is bringing these down. And kind of seeing when I put these two hearts together, I might be able to do something a little differently in this particular space up here, okay? And it could bite me in the butt, and it won't, I might have to end up moving them all back again, but that's, you know, that's what I will do. I will sit here and move circles around to close in gaps to make things look like they flow better. See, now this space right here is going to probably drive me nuts, so I'm going to try to, I have to try to figure out how I'm going to either insert, make enough room to insert a stone, or evenly distribute them so that kind of fills in that spot. I might have to do this. See, I think this is the row I just moved. So now I'm moving it back. See, I was able to kind of fill in this gap. So again, you know, just look at your areas and anything that your eyes are drawn to. It means it's an area that you need to work on. You need to, you know, try to, you know, fill in a gap if you can, or just make some adjustments. And, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, sit and work at it for a little bit. Okay, so right now that's what I'm going to do for that part of it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this, and I want to mirror this just like I did the other one. So I'm going to mirror it to the left. And see, now it's lagging a little bit because it's, you know, it's trying to mirror all of those circles. So I'm going to do Control G to group this half of the heart. I'll change it to another color. And now I'm going to take these two hearts and I'm going to try to put them together. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, and I'm going to start nudging those over, and I'm going to overlap these circles. And I'm going to start with trying to line up the bottom one. And again, you may have to zoom in. And I can see that's pretty much sitting on top of it. Okay, so now that's sitting on top of it. So the key is now I have to, I'm going to delete any overlapping circles. So where that orange line is, there could be brown circles underneath there. So what I try to do is I just try to run my cursor going up, and I'm going to select any circles. So if it looks like it's selecting the orange circle, then there's a brown circle underneath it. If I hit delete, it should, let's see, make sure I can't tell if it deleted them or not. Nope, it doesn't look like it did. So let's try it again. Go up. Select delete. Okay. So now it has deleted what I think are probably all the overlapping circles. Like I said, it's not going to be a huge deal if you have overlapping circles. It just means your cutter's going to recognize that there's two circles, so it's just going to cut that hole twice. And it'll add an extra, one or two stones onto your stone count. But again, that's not going to be a make or break situation. Okay, so we have still some issues with some collisions going on here, okay? So what I'm going to do is now I am going to ungroup this side. So I'm going to hit Control Shift G. It's going to ungroup it. I'm going to change this all to one color, just because we want our heart to become now one. And now I can go in. So basically what I see here is, yes, we have those two tight overlapping stones here. So again, you can leave them, not a big deal. Or if you want to, nudge them apart a little bit. Then, you might have to nudge a few more apart. Kind of keep your flow of stones in a line, make it one flow into the other. So a lot of times when you adjust one, that means you kind of adjust sometimes other ones. I would just kind of bring these down a little bit. I always adjust multiple rows up. That way, if you adjust each circle just a little bit, and you kind of start spacing them little farther apart, it doesn't. You don't notice so much that the spacing has changed between each one. Okay, but if you just did it between, say, these two, and you left the rest, then it would still be noticeable that the spacing between these two is different than the rest. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, now I'm going to go to this area here. See, my spacing here is a little bit off. Sometimes, because we know we've taken one side of the heart and we've put it over to the other side, sometimes when you make adjustments on one side, when you do something like that, when you make adjustments on one side, that means the other side needs to be adjusted too. Till you can get those pieces to blend, okay? So I'm going to still, I think, put that there. Put one here. Getting closer to having that area kind of blend together a little bit. There's a space here, but I don't know if there's anything I really can do about that. I think it would be just too tight. Let's see. Maybe not. Maybe I can do this. Take this. Okay. So now I'm going to move these over a little bit. I am going to get a stone here. I have a space here, so let's try to take these, move them a little bit this way, so I could fit this in here. These I have to just resize a little bit like that. Something like that. So now let's kind of go up. See what we got going on here. So I kind of have a feeling that I'm going to be correcting these all the way up. But to me, that's what's got to be done. Okay. So it's not all about just adding a stone into a space. Sometimes when you move things around, you create other gaps, and to finally close things in to where you can't add that stone anymore, sometimes you got to go up a few layers to do it. Let's see. Okay, so now I need to create kind of a space. So this is where I say I kind of look on a line. Okay, so I'm considering this one line going this way. So right here, I could probably take this, move it over. And it was enough to insert a circle and fill in that space. I don't think I can do that on here, so this is just going to kind of have to stay as is. I think I'd be able to shift this around, maybe spread these out so it's not as noticeable. Sometimes you can spread them out a little bit, and helps fill in those gaps a little bit. Let's see. Okay. So see, when you zoom out, your eyes aren't really drawn, even though there are a few little gaps here and there. Okay, and like I said, when you're working with one stone size, it's not going to fit perfectly. Okay, it's just the way it is. So you can only move things around so much. And you know what? I do actually. I'm going to try this. Do this. Sometimes you just create gaps in other places too, so it doesn't always work out. Okay, there it was. Left off over here. So, okay, so I was able to kind of pull, and I filled that in a little bit more. Okay, so to me, this is the last of the area that we need to work in. And these obviously are too close together, so I'm going to delete one of these. I'm going to create this here, and probably bring these down. So, like I said, I adjusted the stones on this side, so now I got to do it on this side. So basically from here down, I basically readjusted those stones. So I'm going to do that again. close to being all done with this. And now these two are overlapping. So I'm going to take this one and this is my center point. So now I've kind of created a little gap here. So now I have to do a little bit adjusting. These ones I might be able to just go and shift. And my horizontal respacing, and it kind of respaces those. So it respaces everything between the first and the last circles that you selected. The first and the last circles will remain in the same spots. So now I can do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to just put that there, put that there, and I'm going to go over to click, shift, or I'm sorry, click, I'm holding down my shift. Horizontal. So because this was a little bit on an angle, these got shifted down. So I'm just going to reshift them back up again. Kind of keep the spacing that it gave me. Okay. Okay. So now zoom out, and now you can see that the heart is filled in much better. I don't like the spacing in these rows though, going up here. I think that there's like my eyes were drawn to this area, so that means I need to fix it. So I'm going to go quite a ways out, because then I can just move these a tad, and you won't notice that the spacing has been adjusted. Okay, so now I'm going to go off in this direction. Okay, so I'm going to bring this in a little bit. Together, I think, so you had to do that, a little bit of adjustment in the spacing. You know, people probably think, oh, she's crazy doing stuff like this, but like I said, it's just it's my way of designing, and I would rather be a little OCD than to give something to a customer that I truly wouldn't think is close to as perfect as possible, you know. By no means, my designs are not perfect, but I like to feel like I put in my best effort to make them as close as possible. So what I'm doing here is I think I might be able to move these enough where I probably could add a stone somewhere along the line. Okay. Okay, so now before where I thought that there was a little bit too much of a gap. See, now everything kind of looks like it flows a little bit better. You got a little bit here, but again, it is hard when you are bringing a two different types of oh, how do I want to put it? A arch and a straight line together. Um, the circles want to go in one direction for the arch, but then they want to go to a point down here. So it's two different. Wouldn't say pitches. I guess I can't find the right word at the moment. Um, but when those clash, um, the program's like, okay, which direction am I supposed to go into? Okay, so that's where you find that the most areas need to be cleaned up because that program has kind of said, I've kind of run out of a little bit of room here, so I'm not sure, where to put that stone. So it just starts picking up on a new line, and it leaves behind gaps and stuff like that. So this is just one here. Okay. So this is our finished heart. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control G. I'm going to group this. And I'm going to, I think what I'm going to do is, I'm going to leave this here, go back to our other tab that I originally started in, and I am going to bring in all of our other designs. So I'm going to edit, I'm going to copy. You can do Control C for copy. Go back to my other tab, and I am going to zoom out, and I'm going to do Control V is going to paste. Okay, so these are the hearts that we have made. This was what we started with Silhouette. Okay, this is the results it gave us, and for the linear fill, and this is what we, after a little bit of hard work, this is what we ended up changing it into. This is what we started with for our outline, and these are our two versions that we made, altering it two different ways. Put this over here, so all the silhouettes are here. Okay, last version is our linear fill. This is, remember I said this is the most popular fill people are going to pick. Okay, so do you think if you presented these to your customers, which ones do you think they would that they would choose first? If you presented these two types of hearts, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into red also. I'm going to place a black background because a black background showcases the designs a little bit better. Take this, change it to black, and I'm going to put this heart here. So I have to click on the box. I have to right click, and I'm going to send it to the back. Okay. This is just our what we started off with, so this really doesn't matter because we wouldn't, realistically, you would not probably give this to the customer anyways, but if you did, we can kind of compare that too. Okay, so to look at these closely, if you presented these to your customer, and you said, okay, these are your fill options, these are your outline options. Do you, now that you have presented them, and gave them options, do you think that they would select the same option as you would by just letting Silhouette fill the object and you not to do any cleanup with it at all? So chances are they probably would not pick. I would say if anybody were to closely look at these, this is the one that Silhouette did, and we didn't do any cleanup at all. I would say this would probably be the third option for the outline. These two, it just really depends upon, obviously how they want the heart to look, okay? But basically, I would say they would pick either one of these. Now this one, I definitely think that this center one would be first choice, because when you look at it, it looks very consistent as far as both sides are equal. The inside is very consistent being filled. This is consistent being filled on the inside, but when you look at the natural curve, it doesn't even compare. Doesn't even compare to this one here. This one, yes, it had a nice kind of, it stayed consistent with the outside line and keeping the object looking close to natural as possible. But, obviously we had to clean it up. So you would not, definitely would not give this to the customer as is without cleaning it up. But to me, this one could have been cleaned up, probably would have taken a lot longer. Okay, because basically you would have had to have hand placed most of these circles and adjusted all of these lines. And sometimes when you adjust these lines, it kind of throws off the inside. So this one, we started with the majority of it being very consistent and filled in, and all we did was split it in half, cleaned up a little area, and then as we brought it together, yes, it created a few more issues, but it's all about just, moving those circles around, making adjustments, and then you get such a cleaner looking design. So I hope you stop and think when you are filling these objects that, there's more than one option, okay? And like I said, it's not all about it being a race. Yes, we like to find shortcuts, and the shortcut was splitting that heart in half. But doing a shortcut and because you don't necessarily want to do any of the cleanup, or you don't think that that's something that you have to do, you don't, like I said, you don't have to take what the Silhouette program gives you. It's a tool to get you started. It's not a tool to create perfect designs. No program is. I don't care if you spend $2,000 for a program or you spend $50 for a program. They all consistently work just about the same, because it's following the lines of the vector object that you gave it to fill, and it's taking into consideration the size of the circle and the spacing that you're going to tell it to put between each circle. Okay, it's doing the math, and your $2,000 program and your $50 program is going to do the math pretty much exactly the same. So no matter what everybody tells you that you can just push a button and you get these perfect designs, it's not going to be perfect, okay? It's going to look okay, this one looks okay, and quite frankly, I guess if you didn't see it like this, you would think, okay, yes, it's okay. But once you start seeing it like this, you don't want to do it like this anymore. Okay? So, but it's not the program that got it to look like this. It's you. It's your eyes. It's the click of your mouse. It's how you perceive the design and how you perceive and you want it to look. And that's what's going to take you to the next level. So, like I said, I'm not here to bash anybody, and I don't perceive to know it all, but the things I've taught myself, and I look back at my designs that when I first started, they look completely different than the designs than I'm doing right now. Okay, because I have learned to train my eye to spot spacing issues, imperfections, and I have strived over the years to, especially when I started selling my files, I strive to create quality files and quality designs for my customers. So I, I tweak things as much as possible. And so that's just, like I said, this is my point of view on designing. So, you can take it for what it's worth and apply it to the way you want to design. So, again, this is, step 3 or tip number 3 in my series that I'm going to be doing. So I will do some more videos and show you some, other things and how you may approach them. And hopefully, after looking at, going to these different videos, and you'll learn different things, and hopefully you'll be able to apply them to your designs that your customers want you to make for them. And it gives you options. It will give you options, and you can decide at that point in which direction you want to go. So if you like this video, please hit the like button. And again, if you want to subscribe to my channel, and you can get notified when I release any new videos. If you're interested in those, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.